Today, we're going to be talking about embracing the shadow and unleashing inner strength in that manner. So, welcome, welcome. I am so happy to share this topic with you. And we're standing at the threshold of autumn, which is truly a season of transformation. And we find ourselves on this profound journey and being encouraged to move into the shadow. The veil, as they call it, starts to thin at this time of year. And in honesty, it's more of the thinning of our own personal veil as we become more in tune with our intuition and the spirit realm and stuff like that. So it's less about things moving in and out of our space and more about we're just starting to be able to get in tune with it. But that's not the topic of our video today. Today, we're going to really be talking about the depths of our own psyche, right? Uncovering the hidden truths and unearthing dormant strengths that we might have so we can embrace the full spectrum of who we are in our most authentic form, right? And why is shadow work so important, you might ask? And in the words of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So our shadow is the unacknowledged part and aspects of our being that holds keys to understanding the hidden forces that actually shape our lives. And why is autumn the perfect season for this exploration? It's because within the wheel of the year, autumn is a time of balance. It's a time of ending. It's a time of, when the day and the night start sharing equal space again, inviting us to find equilibrium within ourselves. And it's a season when nature herself engages in a profound transformation, right? The shedding of the old and making way for the new. The falling leaves are an indication of creating space and place for fresh growth to begin, right? And it's a time of reflection, release, and renewal. Can you tell that autumn's probably one of my favorite seasons? So when we start aligning ourselves to the natural rhythms, we too can start shedding the layers of what no longer serves us and confronting our fears and limitations so that we can allow our inner light to shine even brighter, right? And as we step into this beautiful season, I invite you to embrace the opportunity that is offered to us so that we can delve deeper into healing and growth and start to emerge as the most authentic version of ourselves. So join me on this exploration of shadow work to unravel its mysteries and connect with the wisdom that autumn and the wheel of the year carry for us. And we'll navigate the shadows to rediscover our brilliance within together. So let's begin that journey, right? First off, what is shadow work? It's a transformative process of confronting and accepting, as well as integrating our hidden aspects. By embracing our shadow, we can embark on a profound journey of self-discovery, wholeness, healing, growth, and spiritual awakening. And it's essential that we accept these concepts of personal growth that will start leading us toward more authenticity and fulfillment with our lives. And it's all aligned with Carl Jung's profound insights on the human psyche. I believe it was in the 1950s when he first started keying into the word of shadow. And shadow work is a psychological and spiritual practice that involves delving into the hidden and often unconscious aspects of our personality. Oftentimes it's facets of ourselves that we've repressed, denied, or even deemed unacceptable due to societal conditionings. These are some of those outdated beliefs that I've been talking about. And not only is it societal conditioning, but it's also personal experiences and moral judgments. So, whether it's, keying into things that we might have experienced and trauma that has built in this stress response that keeps us small, or it could be even religious beliefs and stuff that have worked to build this psychological repression within our bodies. And as Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, as he introduced that concept of the shadow, which is the darker, unacknowledged side of our psyche, he believed that by understanding and integrating these aspects that we can actually have more personal growth and self-actualization. So, within this, the self-discovery and the self-integration part of it, we start having an opportunity to explore some of the depths of ourselves. And we were talking about how Jung described the unconscious consciousness directing our life and making us feel like we are fated to do certain things. And until we start engaging in the shadow work, we allow these hidden aspects to really control us. And when we want to become the creators, co-creators of our lives, we really have to start tapping in and unpacking some of these things, right? And through that, it helps us embrace our wholeness. Jung emphasizes the importance of individualization in the process of becoming one's true and whole self. And that is done by confronting all parts of ourselves, including our shadows, so that we can move into greater self-acceptance and authenticity. And he says, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. So I often talk about things happen for us, not to us. That's part of that, because we can choose what lessons we start to move forward with and how they shape our lives, right? And through that, we can start having emotional healing, because these repressed emotions and traumas that reside in our shadow selves, to the point where I've actually seen people consider themselves having dark entities or attachments, because the inner child reveals itself sometimes in very dark manners, because it's been repressed for so long that it starts screaming out to be acknowledged. And sometimes that can reveal itself in a very dark manner, but it doesn't mean that you actually have a dark attachment, if that makes sense. So Marion Woodman noted, she's a Jungian therapist using Carl Jung's practices, that she noted that the paradox of the shadow is that is usually exactly what we do not want to be. So by processing and facing these emotions, we can actually start finding healing and relief from that, right? And through that, we gain personal empowerment. By integrating the shadow, we can start stepping into like our fullest capacity, our fullest purpose in life. And Jung even mentioned that the shadow is 99% gold. And by tapping into this potential, the creativity and strength that it can be fueled from acknowledging this, and by embracing and harnessing these aspects of ourselves, we unlock hidden talents and capabilities. I've seen this over and over again, especially as an artist, because a lot of my work is fueled by communing with ghosts of some sort, and this could be even my personal shadow and ghost. And as I start diving deeper into some of the practices that you can use, a lot of my work started off as journaling. There was one whole installation that I did that was purely letters that people will never read, and processing what was triggered from our relationship. And then I laminated those and started burning it. It was called Ritual Burn. You can find it on my website, my fine arts portfolio and stuff. But it's part of that, this stuff, all of this stuff inside of us can fuel so much more, and also start showing other people the path to start healing themselves, right? And not only does it improve our relationship with self, it also improves our relationship with others, because a lot of times unacknowledged shadow aspects can be a manifestation of what we don't like about ourselves, and we project it onto other people. So by doing shadow work, we can reduce the projection and gain clarity in our relationships. Jung wrote about this by saying everything that irritates us about others can lead us to the understanding of ourselves. And that's 100% true. I feel like a lot of people, and it may be different age, coming of age may be at different times for other people according to their emotional maturity and stuff. But I know I've seen this time and time again, including in myself, that once you hit a certain age, for me, it was like around 28, 30, I started realizing the aspects of people in my life, especially family members, my very close relations, that the things that I didn't like about them were actually things I didn't like about myself. And as soon as I started dealing with some of those things, I was able to start forging new and better relationships with those people in my life. So that's a huge part of our growth and healing, is when we can start acknowledging and accepting our downfalls instead of continuing to have excuses and putting blame on other people. That's also talked about in another video. You can check it under the musings section on YouTube, as well as previously in the group. Also, within all of this, we start having a spiritual evolution, because this is very much connected to a spiritual journey, because we are part of the divine, right? We are one with spirit. We are one with the divine, with God. And until we recognize that, we will not be able to dive deeper into ourselves and transcend like the superficial ego, the inner critic. And as Jung says, he expressed this beautifully, saying, "Who looks outside, dreams, looks inside, and awakens." So when you look outside of yourself, you are dreaming, you are finding all of these sort of illusions, right? But once you start learning, looking to inside instead of external validation or external sources for your own personal pain, you can start to awaken the knowledge of the divine within your own body, right? And every layer of this onion, you'll hear me talk about the healing process and spiritual process as being an onion, which we peel off layers, right? It's a very courageous act of self-discovery that you're starting on when you start this, but it's very meaningful and will change your life. So I want to give you a couple of practical ways to start integrating shadow work and also navigate the resistance that you may have pop up. Because once you start, practicing shadow work, some things you may not even realize that you're doing are part of shadow work. And then there may be new things that you haven't even considered, but we will be faced with resistance, fear, and even discomfort in these situations. It's an integral part of the process. And the biggest thing is, remember that you need to practice compassion, self-compassion, embrace these emotions with patience, and go into it with a supportive mindset that allows you to really tap into the transformational potential that lies within working with the shadow. And as Jung stated, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And it's through confronting and working with these challenges of emotion that you start bringing light and healing into your inner world. And I like to, especially as autumn starts coming quicker and quicker, the days start getting shorter, the nights start getting longer, we have more darkness than light. And so it gives us a chance to sort of reflect on that. But also, we have to remember that, yes, we are moving into a dark phase of our life, winter, and there is regrowth, there's rejuvenation, there is rebirth, everything coming in the spring of our life. So, by acknowledging all of that and keeping that in mind, that this is just a cycle. Our lives are very cyclical, whether you're using the wheel of the year or the moon cycles to sort of direct your life, or you tap into some other cyclical style of life. That these are so important, because if we just are constantly in that hustle mode and we never take time to sort of regroup and fully fill our bodies, we're just passing through and we're not living in the present moment and tapping into some of our deeper needs. And I find, in agrarian cultures, where you're farmers or you're living more intimately with the land and the seasons, this would be much easier. A lot of us live more modern lives, and it's harder because there's more opportunity to just keep cranking, because we have modern lights, we have 24-hour Wi-Fi access. We don't have this constant sort of flow within our bodies because we're actually fighting what is natural, right? So by acknowledging and sort of tapping into the wisdom of nature and the cycles of nature, we can start to really work through some of this. So even if you don't practice the Sabbats and celebrations that are associated with the wheel of the year, just taking and following the moon cycles and sort of acknowledging the seasonal shifts can really aid you as you move forward as well. So I'd like to start with breaking down some of the practical ways that we can incorporate shadow work, as well as sort of acknowledge the fear and resistance that we might come up against, right? Because by acknowledging it and accepting that it's going to happen as we're doing this work, we can tell ourselves it's okay to feel this way, that it's part of the process, and we arm ourselves to an extent with being able to process these things and knowing and embracing that these emotions are signals that you're touching upon something that's really potentially meaningful and transformative, right? one of the biggest steps of this is cultivating self-compassion. And you'll hear me talk about this over and over again, because a lot of times people start diving into shadow work and they do not integrate this with a balance of gratitude and self-love practice. And it's so important because we can become consumed by our shortcomings, by the darkness in our lives, and feel like that it's not within our capacity to overcome them because they may be so deep, dark, and painful to even live through that we're drugged into the darkness, right? And the purpose of this work is not to be fully consumed, it's to uncover it, acknowledge it, and then start making steps to improve and work upon that. And the video that I talked about within burnout and disabilities and stuff like that, talking about the different spaces of self-growth and learning to start taking and acknowledging your role within some of this rather than putting blame or having excuses for it is so important, so that we can actually start improving ourselves in our daily life. So I highly, highly recommend, before you get started, making sure that you have a very balanced version of gratitude and self-love practice along with the shadow work as you start moving in, because this is not judgment on your character. It's literally just trying to say, hey, now I understand this trigger. I know what causes it, or potentially, like, I'm starting to understand you. The thing with this journey is oftentimes some things start processing and then we don't always get all the answers. But the longer we are in the process and the more time that we allow ourselves to heal, the more things are revealed to us, right? So within that, I want to encourage you, as you're building this practice, to also create a safe space for yourself. Somewhere that ensures that you're comfortable and you're physically safe from your environment while engaging in this work, especially if you plan on doing any journeying or something like that. And that way you can explore some of the deeper emotions. And you want to go at your own pace. A lot of times, some emotions and memories can become overwhelming because they have a trauma response associated with it. So allow yourself to take time to step back and return to it when you're ready. Judge what you are capable of and what you're ready to process instead of rushing through, because oftentimes when we try to push, we'll find roadblocks, or we always have to work in alignment with this type of stuff. And sometimes we are just not ready. We haven't laid the foundation that is going to uphold us and provide the stability that we need to start processing some of these things. So shelving it for a time being, or returning to it later, it doesn't matter. These things, we can only work at a couple of things at a time, rather than trying to do all of your healing at one time. It's layers. Like I said, it's an onion, and you want to peel off a little bit at a time. And something that you learn during one layer may start to aid you as you start dealing with some of the deeper things. And remember, some things are so buried deep inside of us that we don't even realize that they have integrated so deeply. So be very, very gentle with yourself as you're processing all of this, and make sure that you're safe. It is possible to do this kind of thing outside, but you might have emotional responses while you're doing this. So you want it to be kind of secluded. You want it to be a little off the beaten path. So like if I'm trying to do any kind of meditations or anything out in nature, I usually find a nice safe trail that I can sort of step off of and find a place where I can be with nature and not have to worry about external factors. So like for me, I wouldn't go to the park downtown and sit on the creek out in the wide open with people walking past all the time. I would probably go to one of the national parks and find a rock out in the middle of the creek or something to do something, but walk further up the hiking trail instead of doing it right near the parking area, if that makes sense. Also, you don't have to do this alone. There are practitioners like myself that work with this kind of deep dive and healing work. And this can be a therapist, a spiritual counselor, your priest, a trusted friend, anyone that can provide guidance and a listening ear when you're going through challenging moments. And that brings me back to the journeying aspect. I often hear about people taking like shamanic journeys and stuff within this work. And until you have fully learned how to successfully and safely go in and come back out of journeying, you want to be very, very careful of this, especially when you're doing shadow work, because sometimes if we don't create a safe space or something like that, things, dark entities, whatever, can attach themselves when we are in this weakened state, I want to say. So being able to acknowledge that you might need help can be very, very important. And a lot of times, and this isn't across the board, but oftentimes we by ourselves aren't capable of identifying some of the triggers and being able to step back and actually have self-actualization in some of these moments because they are so traumatic. So being able to have someone that has also processed some of these things or is trained to help us work in our diving into our subconscious mind and acknowledging the hidden aspects of our psyche, they can help us integrate on a deeper level to facilitate that self-awareness, the acceptance, and the personal growth, so that we can start embracing the shadow and moving into wholeness and self-actualization. Let me know if this doesn't make sense, and I'm more than happy to dive deeper into journeying and some of those aspects. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on that because within seeking support, it's really individual what you need. And like for me, I do, for part of my integrative well-being practice, I use Reiki and a lot of other aspects. So like cord releases, emotional releases, and stuff like that. Even soul capturing. Like sometimes we have a part of the puzzle. I like to call us a puzzle piece. So you might not feel completely whole, and that's because maybe part of your subconscious has been shelved for a very long time, or you left it in the past. It's less of a fracturing and more of just a piece doesn't seem to be there. Right? And we can actually go back and find those pieces and reintegrate them into your life. And so that's why I really like seeking support. And it can help you integrate things a lot faster than if you were trying to do it on your own and you're still questioning the meaning behind things, right? So a very useful technique that I like to do is any type of mindfulness practice. It helps you stay in the present while you're processing difficult emotions by focusing on breath and observing the sensations within your body without judgment. This is a somatic practice. And within that, you can have meditation, you can have breathing practice, movement practices can even help, especially if things are deep in your root chakra or chakra. I'm trying to work on my pronunciations of some things, but within that, especially the Kundalini yogic practices, we can really tap into opening it up and releasing some of those things, whether it's using acupressure balls or just the stretches themselves. So all of this allows you to heighten your awareness and bring yourself to a state of stillness so that you are able to observe your thoughts and emotions from a detached perspective. And as you're going through some of this process, a lot of times present moment things, like I need to feed the cats, or I forgot to take the package to the post office, or, all of your to-do list can start piling up. What I like to do is have a journal or something to the side for taking notes on things that are intrusive but are important. And then that way you can sort of like catch it and release it. And by writing the item down, it can help. Okay, I've made a note of this. Now I can return to the work that I came here for. Other times you can just be like, okay, I'm not thinking about that right now, and move on. Other times it's, it may be a prompt from spirit or from divine that you need to make a note of, because things can come through and you might want to do more research or something like that, right? And as you're working through these meditations, there's plenty of different providers. Insight Timer is one of my favorites. There's YouTube videos, stuff like that you can use for guided meditations. I also write my own and do in private sessions. I'm working on slowly getting editing some things that I can provide for my community as well, instead of just private sessions. But within that, these guided meditations can really help you start paying attention to the discomfort and resistance that is starting to arise, right? But it's important to find your style. Not all meditation is about sitting still and breathing, right? Not all meditation works. If especially in guided meditation, if you do not like the voice of the person that is prompting you, you're not going to enjoy yourself at all, right? So finding someone's voice that you enjoy listening to, that is soothing, that doesn't like, oh, I wish they'd just stop talking. Finding those things that work for you is so, so very important. And with meditation, like I said, it's not all about coming to stillness and just breathing and trying to remove all thought from body. It can be meditation through art. It can be meditation through walking. I often do float meditations. I'll go to a friend's pool and, they'll all be talking or whatever, and I will be by myself, fully submerged, just my nose and mouth out of the water, because it sort of like quiets everything. There's a lot of different techniques, and you can utilize them however works for you. Because meditation helps foster self-observation and allows you to become an impartial observer. So it helps you to separate yourself from your inner world and start uncovering the buried emotions, fears, unresolved conflicts that might be held in the shadow. And that brings me to journaling about your feelings. Journaling is such a huge practice, and it doesn't have to be about chronologically keeping up with your day-to-day life. It can literally be describing your sensations and emotions and thoughts about, what you've experienced and what has triggered you through the day. That way you can start to gain clarity. And it provides a safe and private space for you to express your innermost emotions, thoughts, and experiences that, you might not be able to explore openly in other ways, right? And it allows us, a lot of times we get caught up in the production of it, especially if you're doing like bullet journaling or you like to do flowers and all these nice layouts and stuff. I encourage you to get just a journal that's junky, or a sketchbook or something like that. What I've done is I have a journal that is just the outside, and I can replace. So it's a nice leather hand tooled journal cover, and then I just put fairly cheap sketchbooks in it, just like a 5x7, and I'll replace it as soon as it's finished. I just shelve it. I don't even look at it. You can burn these. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes you might want to go back and look at where you were at in a certain time, see what you were processing, and then compare it to what is going on now. So that's why I like to keep them. And a lot of times it's my celebration journal as well as my processing journal. So especially working with the artist way, Julia Cameron's book, she talks about art pages or morning pages, and she recommends doing 3 just like streams of conscious write 3 pages of stream of conscious writing every single morning as soon as you wake up. And sometimes that can get hard. If you need to record it on your phone, it's mostly just about blurting out all of the gunk that has, wasn't released during the night, and starting to move into the day without having those burdens, if that makes sense. And through journaling, it helps to externalize the inner conflicts. It makes them more tangible and manageable because it reveals patterns and triggers associated with your shadow self and starts facilitating the self-awareness and understanding. I also like to do dream analysis in this area of my journal because, and it's also super important to sort of like set your intentions for your dreaming as you go into the evening. And then in the morning, if you can't immediately grab your journal, which it's usually best to have it on your bedside table and immediately pick it up. But I understand, nature calls. You might have to take a bio break immediately in the morning, or kids wake you up, animals wake you up, that kind of thing. Usually when that sort of thing happens and I'm not able to immediately write, I set the intention as I move into, brushing my teeth or whatever, that I will be able to understand and process the knowledge and the lessons given to me during my dream time to then be able to process out on the page or integrate into my life. And it's important because dreams are really a window into the subconscious mind. And by analyzing your dreams, you can reveal hidden aspects of your psyche. And there's so many symbolic messages hidden in the dream state that can come through. So I've already talked about how to keep the dream journal, but what you want to do is start looking for recurring symbols, themes, even characters or feelings that people induce in your dreams. Because sometimes, a lot of times, people won't be the same, but they will feel the same. The connection feels the same. So if you have, like your partner or, a significant person in your family, you have the sense that they're showing up in your dreams, but the visual isn't the same. Usually it's because of past lives or some kind of soul connection between you and them, and you might be seeing yourself in a different incarnation or timeline that's going on. So, and it's so important to start, exploring some of these emotions they're evoked through the dream state. And so by being able to identify symbols, themes, and recurring characters, they can start to sort of uncover some of the suppressed emotions, maybe unresolved issues and aspects of yourself that you've been needing to acknowledge. So some of that, there's great prompts across the internet that sort of talk about what some of the symbology might mean. So like if you're dreaming about tornadoes, but you've never actually physically experienced one, there might be turmoil in your life. If you dreamed of ants crawling all over you, that's, another thing. If you're screaming and no one's listening to you and you're trying to be in a leadership position, but everybody's just walking over you, maybe you need to step up in your life and start voicing and opening your throat chakra and really starting to tap into why you feel like you're not being heard, right? So those are all parts of that. And this space in your journal, whether it's a dream journal or your regular journal, all of this helps aid in self-reflection, right? So that's the whole purpose of shadow work, is how you can start to reflect and even inquire within your body what you're feeling and why. Why am I experiencing this trigger? Why am I feeling resistance to doing this work? What are my motivations, right? Because as we start deeply contemplating thoughts, behaviors, and reactions, this introspection then fosters a deeper understanding of yourself. So it's important to set aside, if you can't do a daily practice, start small. Maybe it's a monthly reflection, then move to a weekly reflection, then move to a daily reflection sort of thing. And through this, start asking probing questions about your actions, your choices, the emotions, the feelings in your body, and consider how your past experiences might have shaped the current responses that you're actually experiencing, right? And this invites self-awareness and insight to your shadow and starts allowing you to draw dots between the past and the present and uncovering the aspects of your personality that might have been hidden or denied. And through all of this, remember I was talking about having self-compassion. One of the other things is embracing and allowing yourself vulnerability. Because if we do not share some of these things, we will never start to process. It's not a weakness to be vulnerable. It's actually a strength. It takes courage to be this authentic, right? So, allowing yourself the compassion that you need to start actually feeling vulnerable and to share in ways that you haven't wanted to express before is so super important. And alongside that, celebrating your process is important as well, because if we just keep going and going and we never reflect upon significant accomplishments and changes in our life, we'll always start falling back into the shadow, right? We'll continue to go back into the excuses and the blame and not being able to acknowledge the real progress that we've made, right? It'll keep drawing us back in because, like I said, the negative, our brains tend to go toward a negative place. And it's like the stasis mode, so to speak. That's our beginning point, is sort of in the negativity. So as we acknowledge and address the changes, even little subtle changes, maybe it's, oh, I didn't get mad at that person that didn't go at the, use the turning light properly and made me miss my light. So now I'm 5 minutes late. Those things, celebrating the process of not being triggered or being able to face some of your triggers and process them in a different manner is so important. And through that, I was talking about, having self-compassion. Part of that is balancing in self-care with the gratitude and the celebratory processes, right? So because you want to nurture yourself emotionally and physically. And this is, this could be meditation, exercise, just, moving your body in nature, practicing yogic, or like flow type, processes. I'm thinking about learning poi myself because I feel like that it'll start sort of integrating some things that I haven't been able to process, and also allowing myself to connect with my body in a deeper manner, right? And then also creative expression is huge, whether it's cooking, whether it's singing to the radio and dancing in the kitchen, or grabbing a notebook and doing doodles and sketches. Creative expression can be so, so vital in self-care. And also remember, setting boundaries are huge, especially as you're processing shadow work, because you need to protect your emotional space. Not everybody is supposed to come along on this journey, right? You don't need to be spilling your guts to just every person that you connect with, because they can use some of those things against you. That's a classic narcissistic trait, is they allow you to start, feeling safe enough to be vulnerable with them, and then they play those things against you. So remember, boundaries are an act of self-compassion. And within that, know when to take breaks. Know when to take and shelf something when you don't have the emotional capacity to continue to work on it, because it will always be there when you're ready to return, right? And then finally, remember your purpose. What is your ultimate goal for shadow work? Why are you doing this? And it's part of developing a greater self-awareness, acceptance, and ultimately personal growth, right? And the discomfort you feel is just a stepping stone toward more positive and abundant outcomes, right? So I'd love to hear some of your takeaways from this, whether it's the personal empowerment aspect of it, some of the history and aspects of emotional healing and the psyche through Carl Jung, or maybe some new things that you might not have thought of as being part of shadow work. Or some, just share your struggles. It doesn't have to be in the comments. It can be privately, but as long as you're starting to embrace the whole aspect and importance of shadow work in personal growth, that's the important step, right? And always feel free to reach out. I try to provide as many resources as possible, and as well as motivation to continue in your healing journey, because I know this is difficult. So, anytime you need to come back and reflect, that's why I'm providing these videos, is so that you can start, really processing. And if you forget something, you can return to it and start the journey all over again, right? So I thank you so very much for tuning in and watching this Keeper of the Old Ways presentation on shadow work, so that we can start to really embrace our authenticity and tap into our inner strength for lasting change within ourselves, right? So, as always, like I said, if you have any questions, you need anything unpacked a little bit more, definitely please, share those, reach out. I'm here as a resource. And, if you want to book a private session, I'm more than happy to, start diving deeper through that as well. And, you know, if you're in the area, I've got several upcoming events. This coming weekend, I'll be at the Dream Gate Holistic Festival in Westminster, Maryland. You never know where I'll be. So if I happen to be in your area, definitely come by. I'd love to chat with you in person, and just many blessings on you as you continue your process. And I will talk to you later. Have a great week.